Today we're replacing both the front and the rear drive belt on this 2.5 liter late model Subaru. Now the reason why we're doing this is because recently we noticed that there was a crack in the AC compressor belt, and it's just a good time to replace it before it gets worse. So that being said, let's go ahead and let's begin. Now before you begin this job, make sure you remove the negative terminal on the battery. This is a 10mm, and then you can start the job. So we'll start by removing the top cover here, and we'll have direct access to the drive belts. Now the local auto parts store here does not have this belt in stock, so I did place an order for it, and once it comes in, I'll replace the belt off camera. So in the meantime, I'm going to reuse this belt. We'll install it back on the vehicle. Now before I do that, I want to take a deflection reading. In other words, I want to know how much this belt is moving. Now you can get a gauge, it's called a belt tension gauge, but again, I do not have that tool. So what I'm going to use is just a ruler. I'm going to apply a decent amount of force. Essentially, the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to apply pressure, and right about here, I can't really apply any more pressure unless I really push down on it. So I'm just going to apply pressure until the belt stops, and I'm going to take a measurement. And so when I reinstall the belt, that's the measurement I want to see. And let's see what kind of measurement we see here. So place some force right about here, it stops, and I'm about 1/4 of an inch of movement. So when I reinstall this belt, I'm going to make sure that I'm pretty much back on the same line here, 1/4 of an inch. Now the reason why you really want to do this is because if you make this belt too tight, you can abnormally run out or wear out the bearings in the alternator, your power steering pump. However, if you do it the reverse, if it's too loose, of course it will screech, but not even that. The crank bearing down here will spin abnormally high, create a lot of friction, heat, and you don't want to wear out that crank bearing. So it's a good idea just to go this extra step, make sure they get everything back on there right. And if anyone out there happens to have the belt tension gauge, you take the measurement from up top as opposed to taking it from the side. It is the same regarding turbo and non-turbo motors, same specifications. If you do need the specs with the gauge, shoot me a message, I'll look it up for you. Now removing the front belt here is quite simple. There's a locking nut right here, that's 12mm. Once you loosen up this nut, then we turn this guy, which will loosen up the tension on the belt, and then you just remove it right off the vehicle. The one on top is also a 12mm. And then right below here, I'll come in for a zoom in a moment, you have another bolt. Just loosen it up, one good tug and that's it, like so. Then what you could do, loosen this a little bit, push the alternator down, and then a little bit more. And what we'll do is just remove the belt. And that's it. Now removing the other belt running to the AC compressor, I'm just going to take a wire cutter and just snap it. And that's it. By far the easiest and the fastest way to do that. So now we're ready to reinstall the AC compressor belt. What's interesting for this belt is that it's a stretch type of belt. Now what that means is you do not have to check the tension once it's reinstalled. Once you place it back on the vehicle, the tensions automatically form to the correct specifications. However, to reinstall the belt, you need a specific tool. Now this is Gates part 91031. My recommendation, if you plan on doing this, you have a couple days and you plan on doing this repair, buy everything online. By far it's the cheapest way. $50 would be for the two of them on Amazon or eBay, for example. Local Subaru wants $85 for the two of them. Local auto parts store wanted $70. So online you'll definitely save $20, $25 easy. Now there are some people out there that will reinstall this belt without the tool. By all means you can do that. My experience, what I've seen over the years, the inside of the belt, when it makes contact to the crank pulley, and you'll see in a moment what I mean, without this tool, it's such a tight fit that the inside will rub against the crank pulley, which is all metal of course, and eats up the inside. And I've seen people ruin their AC compressors because they have no idea that the inside of the belt is now destroyed or beat up because they did not use this tool. So by all means you can do it if you're careful enough, My recommendation again, if you don't want to use this tool, you don't want to spend the money on it, once you reinstall the belt, just check the inside. Make sure that nothing is beat up. It's perfectly in good shape. And lastly, just make sure you have yourself a ratchet, in this case 1/2 inch drive. This is 7/8 of an inch socket, which is equivalent to 22 millimeters. That's because we need to turn the crank pulley clockwise to get this belt back on. Let's jump to the car. I'll show you exactly what I mean. Before we start to reinstall these belts, I just like to check the bearings on the drive accessories. The reason behind that is because since we're here already, the belts are off. If, for example, if this bearing was bad on the alternator, which you would feel, in other words, just turning it like this, it would be scratchy if the bearing wasn't good, then you would want to go ahead and either have someone replace the bearing for you or just replace the alternator, whatever works for you. But just check the bearings here, and these all seem to be in good shape. Also, the crankshaft, this is where it's located. This is where we'll attach that socket along with the 1/2 inch drive ratchet, and I'll also clean off the pulleys here. Make sure there's no grease, grime, dirt. You want to make sure that everything is perfectly clean. So we'll place the new belt around the AC compressor pulley. And this is the first part of the tool that we'll need. This is the way you want to place it. There's a location right here. And this is a 12 millimeter bolt here. Now looking at the crank pulley, what you want to do is turn it clockwise again. And as you can see, you have these service holes. There's one right here. There's another one right here. They're essentially at the 12, 6, 9, and 3 o'clock positions. And that's the position you want to place this in. So I'm just going to turn this clockwise a little bit until this bolt, where my finger is at the 9 o'clock position. Now the area here is just not the best to film, so I'm going to do the best I can. But this is again part of that tool. What you want to do is place it against the crank pulley so it looks something like this. And I'll give you another angle in a moment. Okay? This is what you want to place it right against the pulley. Just like that. And the shape conforms to the pulley. Then you have a U-shape metal adapter. Now, the short end goes on the inside, and the short end will make contact with the 3 o'clock hole on the crankshaft pulley. And again, I'll come in for a different angle in a moment. The longer end stays on top. Okay, so essentially when you're done, this is what it's going to look like. Let me just get it in place, and then I'll get my hands out of the way here. Like this. Okay, this is what it's going to look like. Let me give you a different angle so you guys can see what this looks like. So this is what it looks like. So the shorter end of that U-bolt goes into the 3 o'clock, right there, the 3 o'clock hole on the crankshaft pulley. Longer end stays on the outside. That's because we're going to loop the belt right there. And this is what the belt looks like once you have it lined up with the tool. Now we'll turn the crank pulley clockwise, and we'll get this belt back on the vehicle. Okay, here we go. Now if you need more leverage on the ratchet, grab yourself a socket that fits over the end, another extension. This gives you a lot more leverage to turn the crank here. Then just make sure that the belt is on the rear groove. Make sure that it fits in the groove correctly. In other words, you don't want it walking over to the first part of the groove. We'll rotate the crankshaft by 720 degrees, in other words 2 full turns. Everything looks good to me. Then we'll go ahead and reinstall the front belt.